Hello, everybody. Hi. How are you all? Excellent. Thank you so much for being here with us. This is so exciting. Really amazing to celebrate Tasneem. Hey, congratulations. Yay. Milwaukee Emerging Poet Fellow for 2024. So yeah, thanks to you all. Thank you so much, Tasneem. Thanks, Ae Hee, who will join us here in a moment, and everyone watching online. I'm Mike Wendt. I'm the programming director here. I'm just up here mostly with some announcements, and then I'll turn things over to Ae Hee, who will in turn turn things over to Tasneem. So I'll begin on behalf of Woodland Pattern with a land acknowledgement and say that we at Woodland Pattern acknowledge that in Milwaukee, we live and work on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homelands along the southwest shores of Michigami, part of North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnick rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. We further acknowledge the grave evil colonialism introduced to these lands through genocide as well as slavery, but also via racist and xenophobic beliefs, laws, and practices that continue to inflict harm upon Black, Brown, and Indigenous lives. We honor those who have lived and do now at these intersections of identity and experience and are committed to the active dismantling of white supremacy. As I said, mostly I'm here for announcements, so the next thing I want to do is invite you all, hopefully, to come back here or in one of the other spaces where we're hosting things that are happening in the very near future. Imminently arriving is poet, writer, dream deliverer of dreams, Matthias Felina, who's going to be with us for an extended stay throughout much of September. That will include this Sunday at 2 p.m. starting here, a dream history tour of River West that will begin at Woodland Pattern, and we'll walk around his dream delivery service, in which he delivers I don't know whose dreams, but surreal writings, short poems that are delivered, depending on where you are located, potentially by bicycle or by post. So more information about that, and if you want to sign up to receive dreams at no cost to you. And so bonus, you just get free dreams. So yeah, Dream History Tour, 2 p.m., then Poetry in the Park. We will conclude that series on Tuesday. That will also include Matthias, along with 3 other poets, Jordan Dunn, Alex Niemi, and Crystal Langwell. So that'll happen at Juneau Park at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. And the last thing I'm going to mention, which you all need to come to, is our Brunch Raiser, second annual Brunch Raiser. That is September 15th at the Cooperage from 10 to 2 p.m. And will include readings, performances from Alina Ahmed, the Milwaukee Youth Poet Laureate currently. Woo! As well as former U.S. Poet Laureate Juan Felipe Herrera, music from Marielle Alschwang and Adam Krause, and a lot more, some poetry catwalk, a poetry confessional, brunch, as the name suggests. That is Sunday, September 15th. Announcements done. Thank you for listening. Find out more about these and other events at the front in our print newsletter or online, woodlandpattern.org. Okay, once again, huge thanks and congrats, Tasneem. We've all been so deeply moved and amazed by everything that you've been doing, and feel honored to have had you be the Emerging Poet Fellow for this round, this go-round. Yeah, thank you so much. Struck by, a lot of things in recent Shepherd Express article on Tasneem that was really wonderful, but in particular, her saying art should be as urgent as fighting in the struggle, and something she absolutely manifests, that sense of urgency in her poetry, and I'm excited to hear some of that this evening. Huge thanks also to Ae Hee Lee, dear friend and collaborator of Woodland Pattern for a long time, wonderful poet, author of the book Asterism, highly recommend. That is a great book. Ae Hee is amazing, and was the mentoring poet for this fellowship, and is with us this evening, unfortunately not in person, but remotely. Will appear here in just a moment. In fact, I'm going to turn things over to Ae Hee now. Ae Hee, thank you so much, and welcome.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yes. Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll actually just start off by reading Tasneem's bio and then talk a little bit more about Tasneem and her work. Tasneem Jassar is a Palestinian writer and poet. She graduated from UW Milwaukee with a creative writing bachelor's degree and a minor in women and gender studies. She hopes that the words she writes and shares inspires others and give them a deeper insight into themselves and the world they live in. Her poetry often includes themes of motherhood, sisterhood, and Palestinian storytelling. Before I go on to talk a little bit more about Tasneem, I also just wanted to thank Woodland Pattern for the opportunity to take on this role as an emerging poet fellowship mentor, and just for introducing me to Tasneem's work. When I first encountered Tasneem's poems during the selection process, I was moved by her portrayal of relationships, particularly with her mothers. The poems were intimate and they were tender, and I mean it in the sense of the word, which evokes not only softness, but in the way that also reminds one that tender skin, when touched, aches. Her images unsettled and nestled themselves inside me. The mother's eyes hidden in the drawer, the speaker's braiding herself in her mother's hair, and in Tasneem's words, how delicate things with thorns can be, haunt me to this day. I felt a deep connection to her, not just as a fellow migrant poet, but a person who also struggles and finds wonder in the complexity of human relationships and society. The past year, I've gotten to know Tasneem more through our conversations and her work. I enjoyed our back and forth about what it means to live as an artist, the moments we shared our fears and hopes and writers. And I have had, I have had the honor to see her work go as an activist and poet going hand in hand during the ongoing global struggle for a free Palestine. As her self-portrait poem reads, Tasneem is a poet whose hands speak. So she developed a new and much necessary manuscript on Palestine, on what the war has taken, on grief, but on solidarity, family, and more than anything, love. Tasneem's poetry shows that writing is an act of resistance and hope. Like in her poem Breakfast Table, Tasneem is a poet who looks to the past, present, and future and continues writing, and here I quote, until surrounded by loved ones in the sky, until the chairs around the breakfast table are filled again. While I wasn't able to join in person today due to an injury, I am delighted I get to celebrate Tasneem with you this day with you all. I just cannot wait for a future in which Tasneem's poetry collection will move in the world. Again, Tasneem, so many congratulations, and I'm just so excited to hear you read. Thank you, everyone, for listening too. Please welcome Tasneem.
Right, I wasn't expecting to cry. I mean, not yet. I always cry, but thank you so much, Ae Hee. Those words meant a lot, and I wish you were here, but you know, you're here with us in spirit, and I really appreciated everything you said. Thank you for Woodland Pattern for having me today. I really love this space, and I encourage everyone to check out their work and their website when we're done. Yeah, can you guys hear me like this? Yeah. Is this better? Because I feel like it's far away, but is it good? Maybe too close. Okay, thank you. Before I get into things, I'd like to start with something I wrote. It's not a poem or anything, but I was thinking about this event and how I wanted to explain my journey during this fellowship. I thought of writing this as an introduction or even a letter about why most of my poetry were about mainly one thing. And I don't know, it just felt the right thing to do. It makes sense to begin reading this as a brief explanation of my recent journey, because it's been a lot, so I just put it in like a small letter for you guys. Dear listeners, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right that I'm able to express my grief by writing poetry. I don't find it fair to be able to write about grief. I don't find it fair to cry on paper and create words from my tears. Why do I get the chance to cry in my mother's arms? Why do I get the opportunity to have the time and capacity to write? Why do I get to write about my people's pain when they never got the chance to because it was too late? Dear listeners, for the past 12 months, it hasn't felt right for my poetry to be anything else but about Palestine. I don't mean that a genocide inspired me to write, nor did I necessarily want to write, but I honestly couldn't do anything else. I couldn't do much really, except for writing. When I told my poetry mentor, Ae Hee Lee, this, she was ready to drop every conversation we had about a whole other manuscript we were going to work on, and one that I had already started to write, and asked me how I was feeling, how I was coping, and what she can do to help. I could tell you all about the ways she helped my poetic practices and the different discussions we had about my poetry journey, but I want to thank her most for opening her heart to me and letting me open my broken heart to her. She welcomed my poetry with warm and open hands, and for that, I'll forever be grateful. When she listened to me talk about my poems, she taught me a new way of listening to one's pain. I won't ever stop thanking her for that. One thing Ae Hee focused on when we discussed the themes of my poems is not to hold back. Do not hold back on expressing your feelings, she would tell me. She understood the aspect of the desire to censor some feelings when it comes to writing about the liberation of my land. And she understood that the poems I was writing would often be accepted by the public if they were a bit censored, because that's what's expected from my identity to be as well, censored and non-existent. Throughout my writing journey during this fellowship, I would like to emphasize that the people of Gaza were the ones holding the pen I was writing with. And I would like to remind you to have them in your hearts and prayers as I'm reading my poetry tonight. Lastly, I would like to share that the day I fully decided I wanted to publish a chapbook was on my Palestinian's grandfather's 10th year death anniversary, which falls on the same day as Land Day. I wrote a poem about Land Day this March, and I would like to start with that one today. And I'm also starting it as a way to honor my grandfather too. يوم الأرض نادى ليسقى، نادت أشجار التين والزيتون، واستنجدوا الأمهات فبكينا جميعا. الأرض نادت لتسقى، فالدموع سقطت وارتويت الأرض، ونبتت منها رجال ونساء فلسطين. نبتت منها جيل قادم لتحرير فلسطين، لتحرير أرض دائما وأبدا نبتت منها الزيتون، لتحرير أرض دائما وأبدا اسمها فلسطين. I also figured it would be appropriate to have my other opening poems a dedication to Palestinian martyrs. And this is the one Ae Hee talked about, which is called Breakfast Table. Where do all the martyrs go? Do they land on the clouds and embrace crumbs of childhood as they wish and dream above chocolate cakes and candles? Where do all the martyrs go? Is the lover sleeping on the lap of whom they've prayed for? Is the child in the arms of who could have been parents? Would I find them as birds above protests? Would I find them hugging the words inside my journal? Or do all the martyrs return to their mothers' hearts? The first home that taught them to never just survive, but to always remember the way the Gaza Sea dances with her children, waves her arms and embraces the salam sent from the prayers in Jerusalem. Do all the martyrs return to their mothers' hearts? The first home that taught them to dance and swim and pray until surrounded by loved ones in the sky, until the chairs around the breakfast table are filled again. For the next poem, I wrote it inspired by one of me and my dad's conversations. This is a conversation we were having on our way to Chicago. This is like one of our usual conversations where we talk about Palestine for like literally hours. And my dad is Palestinian, both of his parents are Palestinian. He always tells me about the memories with them. Most of the time our conversations are about the politics and the history of Palestine, but my favorite is when he gets into, the storytelling of the memories, especially the memories between him and his family before they were forcibly removed and expelled from Palestine. And when we talk about these conversations, he truly does love it. Like, he's very passionate about telling me all these memories. But you can't deny, and obviously there's always a bit of heartbreak when he does share these stories. I don't think everyone thinks about how hard is it, to have the urgency in sharing these stories without breaking down every time you do. And it's not easy to hide these emotions sometimes, and I do notice my dad's silence. Not that he needs to explain his silence. Trauma can't be explained sometimes. But yeah, I was interested in writing about a poem about me understanding that silence and that pain at the same time as I was asking him about that pain and these stories he always shares. And it's called During a Car Ride, You Ask Your Displaced Palestinian Father About Home. You switch the conversation. You switch the conversation after you ask your father, Baba, why didn't you take pictures of your house when we visited Betin? And you have asked this before, but you knew you never got the honest response until he answers with tears in his eyes, telling you how he couldn't control the tears in his eyes. The tears invading his face when he went to his house after years of not seeing it, and he wipes the tears from his face while whispering how broken everything was. How the steps by the front door that were once a place to play and jump were collapsing. How unrecognizable it was to see something as simple as dust collecting on the turquoise tables. How there were no roses to greet him at the front gate. How the water well was begging for his tears. How broken his heart was to find the lonely fig trees. And you find this surprising because you swear you never saw a more beautiful house. And you tell him this, but he laughs and says, if only you saw it before. If only you saw it when your grandmother was still living in it. If only your grandma was still alive. You want to hear more, so you ask again about not taking any pictures, but he stays silent. He opens his mouth, pauses, goes silent. When you ask your displaced Palestinian father about home, and you can almost feel the shattered bricks of his old house entering your rib cage, you switch the conversation. Home will always wait. Tell me when exactly am I going back home? The betrayal of who's providing the cages often gets blurry, but the holders of the keys do not. I see them in my reflection, everyone we lost, their echoes of return back home enters my mouth, and now I only speak to demand freedom. When am I going back home? Before my Sido was displaced from his land, he planted and grew olive trees that hugged my teta in case he would come back home. When am I going back home? I long for returning. I want to take my last breaths back home, where the trees and the roses, the Yafa oranges, the 100-year-old lemons, the Nabilsi knafe, the black, white, and red and green representing the 75 plus years resisting, the zayt, the za'atar, and the zaytun, the memories, my family, where the prisoners will break free, where the river meets the sea. I will go back home. I will go back home, and when I go, I will take all the tears I saved from the years I wish to see you. I'll set them free and use them to grow my land. When I'm back home, I'll be waiting for stories to be read in the warmth of my shade underneath my leaves, as children eat from my olive branch hands, telling tales only the brave would understand. For my next poem, I'm gonna try not to cry while talking about it. That's me and my sister in Palestine. And this poem means a lot to me because I wrote it first of all, I wrote this in December last year. And for whoever doesn't know, December is usually in Palestine, it's usually known as strawberry season in Gaza. And I wrote it when I realized how many connections I can make with the things that mean the most to me. So my little sister was born on December 27th, and I call her my strawberry. That's just the nickname me and my family, specifically me and my dad, call her. We just call her our little strawberry. And what I discovered in my writing, specifically like recently, I kept going back to writing about how devastating this last December was, specifically for Palestinians. You know, they didn't get to sell the beautiful strawberries, the rich, beautiful strawberries they always get to sell, and they take care of the whole year and plant and grow. And then it would take me back to my sister's month and her nickname. And this poem is called My Strawberry. Perhaps because everything is connected. How a Palestinian December grows strawberries and grew my sister simultaneously from the same earth that my ancestors watered, cried to, and prayed to. Perhaps it's because strawberries this season weren't there to reunite with December, from a genocide that aims to obliterate their seeds. Perhaps it's because if my sister was to never to celebrate the 27th of December, I wouldn't breathe. I wouldn't breathe or sleep because dreamless nights are nightmares and it wouldn't make sense to dream without her. Perhaps it's because a lot of Palestinians can't breathe in December, in winter, or ever. Perhaps it's because it could have been my sister. Or maybe it's just because there were no strawberries this year. There were no strawberries. And I saw a glimpse of what life means without your favorite thing, and I couldn't breathe. I did wish for it. I wished for a Palestinian December filled with strawberries and dreams and sisters celebrating birthdays, but no one is celebrating, and I can't sleep or dream or breathe. Love you, Sadine. I'm not gonna look at that side because I cry. Stop crying. These are my grandparents. And, you know, I'm going to be writing a lot about them in my future chapbook. I can't help it. They're on my mind all the time. And this poem, I can see different versions of it written, but this is the first poem. This is the first version of me writing my imagination of them living freely, basically. It's called If They Lived During a Free Palestine. To my grandparents. They're in the kitchen. She's making Arabic coffee and he's adjusting the radio. They can have the music as loud as they want it to be now. No one is watching them from the window besides a pigeon who can now build its nest on their porch. They're in the kitchen dancing to the echoes of the chanting that returned their freedom. They're breaking their fast as the call for prayer travels throughout the city, knocking on people's doors, telling them that they will come home this time. They won't be kicked out or tear gassed in their mosque, and they will return home. They are in front of the kitchen window, holding each other and watching the roses grow tall as the petals hide the bullet holes on the front gate. They're in the kitchen making scrambled eggs, and for once, they're not worried about the walk to school. The sun sets, and it doesn't matter who isn't home yet, because nighttime is just nighttime now. Nighttime is just a sky filled with stars, and everyone will be home by bedtime, and they will wake up to the sounds of pots and pans clanging and hot mint tea poured in 7 glasses, and laughter after laughter after laughter. It's the following day, and they are in the kitchen. They are nothing but themselves, because that is what you can be when your land is free. Yeah, I talked about this poem a lot. It's just, I love it. A lot of the people I know, I think I've read this all to you. And I wrote it after I saw a Zionist making a claim that because there's no letter P in Arabic, it means that the word Palestine or even Palestine doesn't exist. As ridiculous as it sounds, it's another attempt to make us non-existent. So keep making ridiculous attempts. I'll write a poem in return and name it the letter P. But yeah, I tried this before, but we can try something. So at the end of the poem, when I say one word and I signal this move, we can all say the word Palestine together. I love doing this whenever I read it because it's just like healing for me, specifically when some people don't want us to say that word, Philistine, Palestine, Palestinian. So call it a power move if you want it, if you want to. The aching purplish blue is growing on my arm and body the longer no one talks about you. I see the traces fading away from my body into the wind as soon as the letter P in your name is pronounced. Poppies grow one by one, replacing the bruise passed down by generations. There on my arm, the same arm that holds my sister while marching and protesting, as the letter P dances around us, forming words within circles, forming one word, uniting all circles, one word that is Palestine. Ooh. Thank you guys. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely amazing, Tasneem, and congratulations on your fellowship. I'm one of the executive directors of Woodland Pattern, Jenny Gropp, and we have been, along with Laura Solomon, and we have just been so ecstatic to watch what Tasneem has been able to achieve with Ae Hee Lee, and this is what the Milwaukee Emerging Poet Fellowship is all about, and more. And so we just invite you to stay and celebrate Tasneem tonight, and thank you all for being here. Thank you, Tasneem.